back to the channel. Hope you're all doing well out there. And it's getting to the end of July here. And we're getting closer and closer to Halloween season, baby. It's always a great time to watch horror films. I do it all year long, but especially getting into the end of July now, it's just mostly horror films. So we're going to be reviewing mostly horror films and talking about mostly horror films from now through the rest of October. There will be other films peppered in depending on what I see in the theaters and whatever new comes out that I want to review, but mostly it's going to be horror films. And with the Meg 2 coming out next week, I'll review out for that. Before we talk about this one, do me a favor, like, comment, and subscribe. Join me here, great would appreciate it. Today we're going to talk about Summer of '84. This film came out August 10th of 2008. It's an hour and 45 minutes long. It's not rated. Had a budget of $1.5 million, and it was directed by 3 directors. This is a Canadian production. It was filmed up in Vancouver. And we got a nice little cast here. I actually really like the cast here. It's one of the strengths of this film. We have Graham Vershawn playing Davey. He is our main lead of the film. And his friends are played by Judah Lewis, plays Tommy. And some of you folks probably have seen Judah Lewis before. He was in the Babysitter movies on Netflix and the Christmas Chronicles on Netflix. And he also has a new movie out. I can't remember the name of it, but it was directed by Joe Lynch. That's coming out or just dropped. And yeah, I like him as an actor, actually. He's really good here. Caleb Emery plays Woody. We have Corey Andrew plays Curtis. And we have Rick Summer playing Wayne Mackey. He is Davey's next door neighbor, and he's also a police officer, a highly decorated police officer in this little community of Ipswich, Oregon. And right in the beginning of the film, we get this voiceover from Davey saying about some of the craziest shit happens in the suburbs, and every serial killer has to live next door to somebody. And then we're thrust into it. It's the summer of '84. These kids are on vacation. Davey, Tommy, Woody, and Curtis are best friends. They hang out all the time. They have a tree house they hang out in, their clubhouse. But there's been a lot of, a close-by community called Cape May has had a lot of disappearances. 13 teenage boys have gone missing. There's a serial killer on the loose, and they name him the Cape May Slayer. And Davey is very much infatuated with this case, that there's no clues on who it is, and it could be anybody, and so the boys start pontificating who it possibly could be. And they're out playing manhunt, which is kind of like hide and seek in the dark, which I used to play when I was a kid. This film very much reminded me of my summers as a child, as a teenager, playing manhunt with my friends at night, running through people's yards. And they do that here, and they set it up, but through little clues, and just he helps Mackie, his next door neighbor, move a dresser into the basement, and he notices a few things like a padlock on a door in the basement and some photos of family that he's never seen around, and he starts asking a few questions, being friendly, and he starts getting in his head that maybe Mackie's the Cape May Slayer, this decorated cop who everybody knows and likes, even though he's single, lives by himself. Everybody kind of blows him off, even his friends, but then they say, okay, it gives us something to do, what the hell, we'll do it. And they start snooping on him and trying to investigate. And they keep tabs on him at all times, and he buys a lot of dirt. He's buying shovels, pickaxes, and the kids are starting to get more suspicious that it might be him. And it all culminates in, they think it's him, but then the next day, Mackie actually catches the real Cape May Slayer. So the parents are kind of dismissive of Davey. And Davey's so certain that he's like, I'm going to go into his house during this festival while he's occupied. I don't want you guys to come with me. All I want you to do is keep an eye out for me. That's all I want. And let me know if he's coming back so I can get out of there. And him and Woody and this girl that he really likes, Nikki, I think that's her name, go into Mackie's house, and they go down in the basement, and they open that padlock door, and they see this bedroom almost recreated to be Mackie's childhood bedroom. And they go into this bathroom, and they find a decomposing body in the bathtub, and a kid who we saw get taken earlier in the film, bound to around the tub, and his mouth duct taped. And they free him. They tell the police go and try to arrest Mackie, but he disappears. And Woody sleeps over at Davey's house, and Mackie is hiding up in the basement, which we set up earlier, and we'll get into that in a second. Comes down, takes both kids, chloroforms them, and takes them out to this island where he's been dumping bodies for a very long time. He kills Woody. He injures Davey, but leaves him, and he tells him, he goes, I want you to grow up remembering I'm going to come for you at some point. I want you to look over your shoulders the rest of your life. And he goes on this monologue to Davey, and then he takes off and leaves him to live. And that's pretty much the summer of '84. What to like about this film? Well, I think the cast is great here. I think these kids really work well off of each other. They have really good chemistry. I buy them as friends. And this movie, honestly, up front, is kind of a cross between Stand By Me, Stranger Things, and It. Only we don't have this killer clown. We have a real serial killer amongst us. It's kind of like, an R-rated episode of Goosebumps, almost. And that's not a bad thing. It's actually a very good thing. Again, the cast here is the strong suit. And even Rick Summer as Wayne Mackey, he's great. He comes off as very nice, very friendly, very neighborly. And he's supposed to be this badass cop. And he's so unassuming, you wouldn't think he's a serial killer. And even when the first time I saw this, I was like, maybe he's not. Maybe this kid's totally off base here. Because he believes in a lot of conspiracy theories. A lot of articles from like Star Magazine, stuff like that, like National Enquirer on his walls. So you can see where this kid's imagination is going in overdrive. But it ends up being Mackey. And Rich Summer's performance as Mackey, once he turns heel, the bad guy, when he unleashes who he is onto Davey, when he's given him that monologue on the island, when he leaves him live, but he's already killed his friend, and he's really intense, and he is fantastic here. The pacing, I don't mind the pacing. There's a lot that doesn't happen. It sets up the kids, their friendship, this town, this little community in Oregon, who they know about what's going on in Cape May, but it's one of the towns down the road, so they're not completely worried about it, but it's on the news, and Davey's dad works for the local news station. He's a cameraman for the local news station, so it's always on the forefront of everybody's minds and topics of discussion. But the other thing I like is they set up some things earlier in the film, like when Davey's helping Mackey move that dresser into the basement, well, they set up the locked door, which piques his interest, and photos of family members that Davey's never seen, even though Mackey's lived next door to him his whole entire life. Because they set up, Mackey even says, I remember when your parents brought you home from the hospital. And he even says to him, I remember when you guys first moved in, I helped your dad move some stuff up to the attic. That comes up, I think, twice during the film, setting up later on in the film when we get to the last act where Mackey's hiding in the attic and he comes out. There are moments of suspense when they find the kid in the basement. There's a scene where he abducts the one kid that Davey finds later in the basement tied up. It's all well executed. It's well shot as well, and it's definitely pulling on those nostalgia strings. It takes place in the 80s. Now, you can tell they didn't have the budget to be spending money on copyright for a ton of music. There's only one song you really hear, Bananarama's Cruel Summer. The score is John Carpenter-esque. It's very synth-heavy, and I love the score here. I really do like this film. When I first saw it, I fell in love with it. Is it perfect? I wouldn't say it's perfect. I think that the last act, getting to maybe a minor negative. I really like the last act of Mackey taking them to the island. When it discovers it's Mackey and he gets away, it's almost like the movie should end there. I don't know if they had any hopes of making a sequel, but it would have been nice to pick up a sequel right there where Mackey comes back years later and Davey's a little older. But that third act almost seems tacked on. Because what are the odds of Mackey hiding in their house, getting the two boys out of the house with the parents not knowing, and getting to this island when all the cops are looking for him? It stretches the believability. Everything up till then is pretty believable, and then that kind of stretches it a little bit. But his performance is so well done on the island, and Woody gets killed, which brings up some real stakes in the movie. It still works, so I can't be mad at it too much, but it is a kind of a slight negative for me. It almost feels a little bit tacked on. But it is a really good sequence at the end of the day once they're there and they're getting chased by Mackey. Now, this film was totally filmed up in Vancouver. It was not shot in America. And the directors are from Canada, and half of the actors are from Canada, which isn't a big deal. But now this was compared to Stranger Things a lot online, I saw. But honestly, the directors claims they wrote and directed this film, that they wrote the script before Stranger Things even came out on Netflix. I don't know if that's true, but it's what they've said. When the boys are in the clubhouse at one point, they're drinking whiskey. They're taking like a swig of whiskey, and it's McCready whiskey, a shout out to The Thing. And you can tell the filmmakers definitely are Carpenter fans from the score, that little nod, and just the way some of the camera moves are done. At the end of the day, I really like this film. It's a really well done, you could say it's not horror almost, like it's a suspense thriller, but you could definitely put this in the horror category. And I really enjoy it. It's definitely a really well done movie set in the 80s, but if you can find it, it's streaming, but you got to pay for it. I couldn't find it streaming for free anywhere. I own it on my iTunes account. But it's a really well done movie. If you've never seen it, I think it's worthwhile checking out. At the end of the day, I would give Summer of '84 an 8.5 out of 10. I like it that much. 8.5 out of 10 for Summer of '84. If you've ever seen this movie, leave a comment down below. Let me know. Hit the thumbs up. Hit the subscribe button. Share this video. I would appreciate that. I'll be back soon with the review for The Meg. But until next time, bye.